Okay, I'm going to start, and I'm just going to welcome you all to this ISS Regional Initiative. Today's webinar is Cross-Border Family Connections, 7 Principles to Protect Children's Rights in Practice. Since this is a regional webinar, I thought it was fitting to do a little welcome in some regional languages. So I'm going to say kia ora koutou te whānau, talofa lava, malawale, bulavanaka, kia orana, sawadee-ka, konnichiwa, and ni hao. So yeah, welcome to those that are joining from all around the region, and a very happy belated International Social Workers Day, which occurred on Tuesday the 9th. It's not a coincidence that we've scheduled this webinar for this week. Social work has been a core practice of the ISS network for soon to be 100 years this October. To learn more, we have an entire website devoted to our history, and we will put this website in our chat. Next slide, please. We've had over 150 registrations, and that represents over 20 countries. So whether you're joining us in the morning, the afternoon, or evening, we're really encouraged by your interest. A couple of housekeeping items to start with. Everyone will be on mute, but there is a Q&A function which all the participants can access throughout the webinar. Just type a question into the chat box and we'll endeavour to answer some of them at the end of the webinar. We'll give a presentation, then we'll have a Q&A session for those that are able to stick around, and we do hope that you can stay on. At the end, we'll also be asking you to participate in a brief survey. So I'm really excited to introduce and recognise the ISS team that's worked over many time zones, early mornings and late nights to put this webinar together. And I wish to thank my ISS colleagues over at our head office, the General Secretariat in Geneva, and our ISS members in the UK, Canada, and USA. They delivered a Europe, North America time zone webinar earlier this week. But for this Asia Pacific region webinar, we have colleagues from ISS Japan. We've got Miko Ishikawa. From ISS New Zealand, we've got Paula Atrill, Sharon Titchener, and Lily Asoy. And from ISS Hong Kong, we've got Iris Liu. From Childline Thailand, we've got Jinder Shaipon. And from ISS Australia, I've got myself, Damon Martin, and Anjali Prabhu. Next slide, please. So this webinar is around equity and permanency. ISS has focused its efforts on families separated by borders. And while most countries focus their efforts domestically, for over 100 years, ISS has accepted this unique challenge of how to apply many of the good practices you have adopted in your respective child protection systems in situations where children and family are separated by a border. So members of the ISS network developed an advocacy paper entitled Equity and Permanency. This paper was last year submitted to the Hague Special Commission, and we'll put a link to this paper in the chat so you can read it in its full. Basically, equity and permanency refers to principles and subsequent policies of child protection practice. They prioritise the exploration of family placements without discrimination of any kind. They empower child protection partners globally to have a child rights approach, and they ensure family placement options are explored for any child who can no longer be cared for by their parents. Access and connect. It also allows the child to access and connect with their extended family, both locally and overseas, to provide them with the best opportunity for them to be raised with a strong sense of identity, belonging, roots, and culture. Being raised with a strong sense of identity is also around maintaining relationships, even if this is not possible that the child can live with their extended family. Next slide, please. So, why should we worry about equity and permanency? Well, globally, the International Organization of Migration, IOM, found that there's 281 million people living outside their country of origin in 2022. Given the events that's happened since 2002, we can assume this number can only be significantly higher and continues to rise. As a result, millions of children have family connections that cross international borders. So research conducted by the ISS network show that only a small percentage of children in care have an international family placement option explored. There's a lack of policies to support international family finding and engagement at a national, jurisdictional, and institutional level. Child protection practitioners may be unsure of how to abide by foreign regulations and laws associated with securing permanency for a child when working outside of their jurisdiction. And finally, it's revealed that there's deeply rooted racial and ethnic biases that contribute to significant hurdles that children of colour face when achieving permanency as compared to their white counterparts. Now, while race, ethnicity, and nationality alone cannot be an indicator of whether a child has family overseas, failing to consider these elements compromises the ability of the child protection system to seek placement options that prioritize the child's sense of identity, roots, culture, and language. Next slide, please. So a little bit about ISS. We're an international NGO. We consist of a global network of partners, and our head office is called the General Secretariat. It's based in Geneva, Switzerland. We have we're present in more than 120 countries with 135 members throughout the globe. We were founded in 1924, and we're one of the oldest NGOs. We've filled the emerging need to provide a new set of social services following the massive migration flows after the 2 world wars and the many families separated as a consequence. So this year we get to celebrate our centennial from the 7th to the 12th of October, and we've got many events planned that week in Geneva, such as a history exhibition and an international conference. Now, while ISS activities have evolved over the last 100 years, covering a great number of topics in child and family law, our mission today remains the same: protecting children and reuniting families across borders. At a national level, our members' main activity is cross-border case management, and our overall caseload turns at around 75,000 cases per year. ISS members provide psychosocial and legal assistance to families, but they also connect different child protection systems and professionals of different countries by gathering the information that allows stakeholders to make informed decisions. Thanks to our global network, ISS's action is of special relevance to states that have not ratified the 1996 Hague Conventions. Some of our members have developed specialization in promoting and helping implement international kinship care through research, training, and casework activities, and you will hear from some of them today. So what characterizes the ISS network is our variety of members. Often we're NGOs, but we're also government entities such as the Hague Central Authorities, which see an advantage of us of being a part of our global network. We only engage with local professionals. We have over 600 colleagues worldwide, and an ISS motto is cases travel abroad, not social workers. Our ISS teams are mostly multidisciplinary, consisting of social workers, lawyers, and mediators, and we're able to provide holistic services. They all speak at least one of the 3 working languages of ISS, which is English, French, or Spanish. Next slide, please. So cross-border placements cross-border family placements are a form of international kinship care. So in an international context, kinship care is defined as family-based care within the child's extended family or with close friends of the family known to the child. As an alternative care option, kinship care can be an alternative care measure that's intended to be of temporary nature. Kinship care can be in both response to the child's separation from its parents and a way of preventing family separation. It also refers to a variety of care arrangements that take on various forms depending on each country's context. So what are the international standards that we need to be aware of when we're talking about children and kinship care? The starting point is certainly the provisions of the Committee on the Rights of the Child. For instance, Article 21, while providing a non-exhaustive list of alternative care options, it states, when considering solutions, due regard shall be paid in the desirability of continuity in the child's upbringing and to the child's ethnic, religious, cultural, and linguistic background. The same idea is stressed in Article 30 in regards to the ethnic, religious, and linguistic minorities or persons of Indigenous origin. The UN Alternative Care Guidelines, as well as the 2019 Resolution on the Rights of the Child, also recognise the importance of kinship care for children around the world. The 1996 Hague Child Protection Convention provides a legal framework for cross-border kinship care placement by setting up mandatory consultation mechanisms prior to the placement. There are also some important key resources you might want to look at, starting with the Moving Forward Handbook and more recently the Global Kinship Care Guidance, both of which ISS has been actively contributing to. We will insert these links to these resources in the chat. Next slide, please. So the international standards continue to summarize a few of the key considerations that are foreseen by international standards. Children should only be placed into kinship care when it is necessary to separate them from their parents and when this is the most appropriate form of care to meet their needs. It's also about a kin-first approach. Kinship care should always be the first option to be explored when children are separated from their parents. Of course, decisions need to be made on a case-by-case basis, and they need to take into the consideration the child's best interests, as well as the wishes and the needs of the prospective carers. The state has a role to play in supporting both parents and kinship carers to fulfill their responsibilities. And on a cross-border level, any cross-border decision should require a formal decision made by competent authorities concerned. The decision should be based on a solid legal mechanism, such as the one used in the 1996 Hague Child Protection Convention, which ideally additional safeguards would be followed for effective communication and cooperation between the concerned authorities. This is not only around the decision process, but it's also around the preparation, the monitoring, and the follow-up placement. The standards should include informed and trained professionals, including but not limited to child protection authorities, immigration authorities. They need to evaluate the necessity, the suitability of international kinship care for the child. It's also crucial that the processes are in line with the child's wishes and needs and their objective, and they avoid any wrongdoings or abusive practices. Next slide, please. I'm going to take a break from talking in a sec, but I'm just going to, hold on for one tick. I'm just going to show a video, but this is a video that ISS Australia produced, and I'll just give you a quick background. Look, I'm a social worker with over 25 years of child protection experience. I've managed ISS Australia's cross-border child protection casework services for 16 years. Yet in all my years of practice, I've only seen a handful of children in care being placed with family overseas. Now, is this because the social worker or the decision maker, when considering the placement of the child overseas, feels like they're just venturing into unknown territory, or is it simply just the too hard basket? Or could it be their unconscious bias that makes them believe that it's inherently safer for the child to remain in Australia, denying them the opportunities to be raised by their blood relatives, immersed within their culture and language? I had the privilege 10 years ago of placing 8-month-old boy Joshua, who was in care in Australia with his grandparents in Borneo. And this following video illustrates how Joshua thrived in this international kinship care placement, in the care of his family, deeply connected to his rich Bidayu culture and language. And it's also why international kinship care should be considered as a viable placement option for children in care. It's only short video, 4 minutes, but I'll let you watch it and just get a sense of what international kinship care is all about.
If a child remains here in foster care, they might have better access to education and quality to life. But if they can be placed with their family overseas, brought up by their blood relatives, they're going to be connected to their culture, they're going to understand their language, and they're going to know all their family and medical history.
I think over recent years there has been increasing body of literature and research that shows the importance of culture and identity for children. Things like Australia's ratification of the convention has shone a light on culture in ways that didn't happen before. And also I think the pressure on the out-of-home care system has meant we've actually started to look much further into family networks to place children.
Here's a little boy who was from a very deep and rich culture and had the opportunity to be restored to his grandparents back in Borneo. And here's been an opportunity for him to grow up around his blood relatives.
They were asking us whether we want to take the hospitality of my grandson, Joshua. We want to give full love, not only in terms of give him education, but we also want to teach him our culture.
If the children, they are raised by the family or the people that really care about them, it's easily to have that kids to be a high self-esteem and have a purpose in life.
If we've searched here in Australia and we don't find family options for that child, being with their family, if overseas, in their own culture is so important just for the way that they grow up and the way that they understand themselves.
Danku Joshua Emmanuel. Aku senang sawa. Aku dok biranak kak dok jaga darah perawak budaya bi anak.
In this culture, the Bidayu culture, we are very known about respect.
We celebrate Gawai Mansawa, Gawai Daya festival every year. We will put on our traditional costume and everyone will perform the traditional dance. I love playing badminton and football with my close friend in my village.
I remember 10 years ago when I got to Borneo and Josh met his family. It was in the first hour that he was fast asleep in their arms, and right then I knew he felt comfortable being around his blood relatives, and you could see that there was this loving relationship for this child, and I knew that this family placement was in his best interests.
They come through the arrival hall. Joshua already gave his hand. He's already putting his hand out to his great-grandmother, as if like he already knew that the person is his family.
We want to teach him to be a good, intelligent and clever person in the future.
Everyone love me and they care about me a lot.
Thanks for sticking around to watch that. Yeah, and we'll put a link to that video too in the chat. But yeah, feel free to share that around. I think it's really powerful in the sense of highlighting the benefits of international kinship care and seeing it 10 years down the track. So next slide, please. We're going to now move on to our different ISS colleagues from all over Asia Pacific region, and they're going to dive each into the 7 principles of equity and permanency. They'll illustrate them with a case example as well as recommended practice on what ISS believes is needed to make full use of the benefits of kinship care when it comes across cross-border placements. So I'll pass it on to my colleague now to do the first principle.
Kia ora tātou. I'm Sharon Titchener. I'm the manager of the International Child Protection Unit in New Zealand for the Ministry for Children, Oranga Tamariki. I'm going to be talking very quickly about the first principle, which is very fitting to be children's rights. Obviously, any cross-border decision that we are making involving children must be underpinned by the rights of the child, and that importance of that underpinning of child rights is magnified when it is for permanent placement, and certainly if we're going to achieve equity and permanency. So the first principle that is within the ISS equity and permanency is, I'll just read it out, as declared in the UN guidelines for the alternative care of children and the 2019 resolution of the United Nations General Assembly on the Rights of the Child. It is a child's right to live in a safe and stable family environment, for all decisions to emphasize the best interests of the child, to be afforded the opportunity to maintain their identity, and to participate in decisions that affect their life, including permanent placement opportunities. And I think Damon's little clip there absolutely captures those 4 key areas. Next, please. So this is the recommended best practice that ISS has developed in their paper. So the first one is policies must be implemented to ensure family placements are explored and prioritised for children in care. So often we know that international borders become barriers, and it's hard work. It's a lot more difficult than finding someone down the road. However, if we have policies that will inform best practice, and that must be that kinshare is prioritised no matter where it is in the world. Alternative care arrangements, including adoption, must be a secondary option only. That goes without saying. Number 3, the voice of the child must be present when and where possible about decisions involving their permanent placement. And again, when you hear the voice of Joshua at the end of that journey of permanent placement, that is very compelling why the voice of the child is so important. Best interest assessments and determinations need to be conducted, and they need to be, one of the things I would say for this best practice is to ensure that they are done in a manner that is culturally responsive. It is not helpful having assessments done from another cultural lens or viewpoint. And the last one, a child's right to family life, connections, culture, language, and customs must be promoted. Again, that's I'm lucky I've gone after Damon's little clip, because I think that absolutely captures exactly what all these recommendations are. And then those are the articles that are relevant that have been noted in the paper and for equity and permanency are 3, 8, 12, 20, 21 and 30. And then I snuck in 42, which is just making sure governments have a responsibility to ensure that parents, children are aware of the convention and the rights and their rights. So that I just snuck that one in. So now I'm going to pass over to my colleague Paula, who's going to give a quick example of how the rights of children as a first principle can be played out. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. Tēnā koutou katoa. Hello, everybody. As Sharon said, my name's Paula. We work together in a ministry called Oranga Tamariki, and my colleague Lily's going to speak a little bit later on in this presentation. We're a little bit unusual in that the ISS branch for New Zealand is located within a government department. That's not very common across the ISS network. So the example that we have provided in terms of a case study focuses on how we have in the last 4 or 5 years looked to strengthen New Zealand's legislation, policy and practice. So that means that we have done some things to strengthen the way we work to achieve good outcomes for children who come into care, including thinking about how we look far and wide to meet their needs regardless of where their family or extended family might be living. So in 2019, we went through a quite significant reform of our primary child protection legislation, which is the Oranga Tamariki Act. And we made some very big changes to our legislation to strengthen the obligations on the New Zealand government to deliver better outcomes for children in care. Some of the things we did included writing into our legislation both the Children's Convention and the Disability Convention. So that means that our Children's Convention and the Disability Convention now are part of our domestic child protection legislation, which places an onus on our government to uphold all of the elements of both of those conventions. We also strengthened a lot of the care and protection principles regarding prevention, so stopping kids being hurt in the first place, providing assistance to families, and importantly, the principles around when children come into care, looking to their family first for options to provide care for them, and looking broadly in their family. So not just immediate family, but extended family. And for our Māori population, which is our Indigenous children, thinking about what tribe or iwi they belong to and how we can find care solutions for them within that context. We also introduced a range of national care standards which specify the standard of care that children can expect to receive. So that speaks to the assessments, the plans, how their voices are heard, how we're helping kids to transition to independence, and then how those standards are monitored. And then the last thing we did relevant to this discussion is we introduced what's called 7AA, Section 7AA, which for our Māori children who are disproportionately represented in care, we have put in place some requirements about how we focus on the mana of those children, that's their intrinsic worth, how their family or their whakapapa is prioritised, so who is their family, where do they belong, and to look very far and wide to understand that, and then focusing on who has what we refer to as whanaungatanga obligations to children. So that's the people in their lives who have got some obligation to ensure that they're well cared for, they're safe, and they're thriving. We pride ourselves in our organisation of looking beyond borders for children where family solutions are not available in our country. So my colleague Lily in a little while is going to talk through a case study involving a young person who we repatriated to their family in a Pacific country. But just to summarise, our New Zealand legislation is heavily weighted towards thinking broadly about care solutions for children, not just immediate ones in their immediate environment, but thinking really wide and far, who these children are, where they belong, and how best to meet their needs. Thank you.
So good day. I'm Iris from ISS Hong Kong. It's my great honor to share with you here the principle of equal opportunities for children. Let's begin by looking at two international conventions that form the foundation of this principle. Firstly, in the UNCRC, Article 2, non-discrimination. This emphasizes equal opportunities for children, regardless of their race, color, sex, language, religions, or disability. Article 3, best interests of the child. This prioritizes the well-being and development of children, promoting equal opportunities in all actions concerning them. Article 28, this recognizes every child's right to education and advocates for equal opportunities in accessing education. Article 29, educational growth. This highlights the objective of education, fostering each child's full potential and providing equal opportunities. Article 31, this acknowledges a child's right to play, recognition, and cultural pursuits with an emphasis on equal opportunity for active participation. Next, please. In Hong Kong here, our government established the Equal Opportunities Commission, EOC, to enforce anti-discrimination audience. We also run public education campaigns to meet the needs of children. Here's a short video showcasing the EOC's work and a local kindergarten's efforts in promoting equal opportunities of children. Next, please.
Our presenter Karen and the kids are having a Chinese competition.
其實小朋友佢會知道我原來講錯咗，或者就算我講英文，我就算講個説話，老師唔識聽，原來老師都會認同啦，會回應佢啦。咁呢個我覺得係個接納。咁接納裏邊其實都係包含咗尊重，明白你有唔同嘅種族差異，或者係背景有啲唔一樣啊，但係其實都係同一天空下，我哋都係可以嚟到一齊生。
Thank you. Next, please. In addition to creating a welcoming environment that values trust and embraces differences, we are dedicated to provide equal opportunities for all children to develop their potential. We have studied the 1996 Hague Convention on the Protection of Children, which focused on safeguarding and promoting children's well-being in various areas. Here are the key points. Article 3 emphasized the best interests of the child, highlighting the importance of considering that what is best for them when making decisions. Article 5 emphasized the concept of habitual residency, ensuring the child's well-being and continuity of care based on their established connections. Articles 7, 8, and 9 address protection measures, collaboration, and concerns of different states or authorities when dealing with the removal and retention of children, promoting cooperation in protecting vulnerable children across borders. Article 11 and 36 emphasize the need of adequate child protection measures, particularly in urgent or dangerous situations, to safeguard children's well-being. Though the 1996 Hague Convention does not explicitly focus on child equal opportunities, it established crucial principles and measures for protecting and promoting children's welfare. By incorporating this provision into our child welfare plan, we can create an environment where all children have the chance to develop and reach their full potential. Next, please. To implement the mentioned principles, ISS is utilizing our professional network to create a comprehensive child welfare plan that prioritizes equal opportunities. Here how we do it. First, we identify key stakeholders, experts, and organizations involved in child welfare to gain valuable knowledge and develop effective strategies. Second, we establish collaborative partnerships with child welfare agency, foster care organization, adoption agency, and kinship support networks to create a holistic plan. Our focus is on providing equal opportunities for every child and their families. We address disparities and barriers to ensure equal access to growth and development. We involve children, parents, families, and kinship networks in decision-making, using technology and communication methods to ensure everyone's input is valued. Open and transparent communication is essential. We create mechanisms for dialogue and information exchange among stakeholders. We emphasize effective reporting to track progress and impact. Sharing accurate and timely information ensures everyone has the necessary support. Here comes a cartoon to demonstrate how we work on it. Next, please.
Hello, my name is Joan, and I was born in the UK to a Chinese mum. I've been living in a foster home since I was a baby, as my parents are unable to take care of me. Sadly, my mum has hallucinations and tried to kill herself several times. The court in UK wanted ISS to see whether my mum's relatives in China can take care of me instead. ISS Hong Kong social worker Jenny got in touch with my grandparents in Fujian province and flew there to conduct a child welfare investigation for me. Jenny concluded her visit and recommended that it would be of my best interest to stay with my relatives. The judge took Jenny's recommendation and I will be moving to my new home in China soon. I really want to say thank you to Jenny and ISS for their great help.
In conclusion, ISS is committed to make a positive impact on the lives of all children and their families. Thank you for your support as we work together to create a brighter future for our children. Thank you.
Hi everyone, สวัสดีค่ะ So I can speak Thai, but cannot speak Chinese or other language. Yeah, so my name is Jinda Chaipon. I'm a representative from Childline Thailand. So Childline Thailand is a partner of ISS for more than 10 years. And so I myself took on the responsibility of evaluating, or we can call it home assessment or family assessment, to reconnecting with the children and families from the overseas or even placement, but hardly it succeeded in the past. So for local expertise, as my opinion, and for Childline, we thought like the child protection system should engage the social workers or the paraprofessionals in the same countries as the overseas families members for identification and assessment for potential placements. And then when we talk about the local expertise, yes, of course, we think that it should be utilized to use that the local expertise or the local social worker to provide the best interest of the child to meet the goals like child protection system should be aware about it. And next slide, please. So for example, here, so the child protection system must take into account both domestic and international standards, and must be part of the considering the family placement that may occur, and that is the challenge of the local expertise in analyze or even comments or even feedback to send a report later and to the requester at the overseas. But however, we have to aware that is, and we have to think about the term of general assessment dimensions, child development needs, parenting capacity, family and environment factors. Some aspects is require the application of the universal standards, but however, some require the application of the domestically established norms. Next slide, please. And the local expertise is ensure a deeper insight into educational and developmental opportunities, the social relationships, norms, and custom, community resources, families' social integration, income parity and adequacy, housing parity and adequacy, family history and functionings. When I said this, like example, in Thailand, different regions still have a different cultures and values. Example, like, in general of Thai society, is have a strong belief of like, high value of education. So family desperate to find a solution or find a way to send the kids to the high, like a well-known school, like famous school. And in Thailand, it's so expensive. But if you don't understand the culture, you don't understand the value of the people, the context of the family, the context of society, it's hardly that you will understand why they have to do that so hard. Instead of in other countries, probably you can
just only send the kid to school, normal school, and everyone is same equal. But in Thailand, the high school, like famous or, like well-known school, expensive school, it can be opportunities for the family believe like they have a better life. So this is just only example, and then for me, this is, I think, like why the local expertise is must still maintain to be in the process of, of 7 principle for the, for the cross-border case. Thank you.
I think I'm back again. So we're doing the 4th principle, which is no bias. So as outlined in the Convention on the Rights of the Child in Article 2, we need to respect and ensure the rights set forth in the present convention to each child within their jurisdiction, without discrimination of any kind, irrespective of the child or his parents or legal guardians, colour, race, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national, ethnic, or social origin, property, disability, birth, or other status. The ISS equity and permanency principle, no bias, states that child protection systems should address implicit and unconscious biases that may exist amongst key decision makers regarding the complexities of transitioning a child into a family placement overseas and within a system or a culture that may differ from their own. So I find this principle really pertinent to me. As I mentioned, I've managed ISS Australia's cross-border child protection casework services for over 16 years, and I've only seen like a handful of children in care placed with family overseas. And in most of these cases, these children have been placed in countries in the developed world, countries like New Zealand, England, Ireland, USA, or Canada. Very rarely do I see children in care in Australia placed in the developing countries like India, Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Fiji. So even when a positive kinship care assessment is received, I've still observed a lot of reluctance to place children in countries in the developing world. Now, is this because of the social worker or the decision maker's implicit or unconscious bias that makes them believe it's inherently safer for the child to remain in a local placement in Australia? Or is it their bias or unfamiliarity about the cultural and systemic differences, which are typically very different to what we see in Australia? Their biases may also extend to how social work or child protection casework involves in the overseas country. Next slide, please. So we have to be very aware of these cultural differences, our own implicit and unconscious biases, when we're focusing on the best interests of the child by conducting child protection casework activities on all levels. Our implicit and unconscious biases deny these children in care with opportunities to be raised by their blood relatives overseas, deeply immersed within their rich culture and language, like the example in the video of Josh. As mentioned earlier, our ISS network has revealed that there's lots of deep-rooted racial and ethnic biases that contribute to these significant hurdles that children of colour face when achieving permanency with their family. We've also seen that there's a reluctance from child protection systems to explore overseas family placements, especially in the developing world. These placements can prioritise the child's sense of identity, roots, language, and culture. Social workers also need to be culturally aware and sensitive of how assessments and casework may differ in different countries. This may include like how the type of assessment framework that's used, how a background check like a police or child protection check may occur, and it may even involve the living and sleeping arrangements in the prospective carer's home, which may be very different to what is normal in your own country. Next slide, please. Our recommended practice for child protection systems is they should promote training on systemic, individual, and implicit and unconscious bias for professionals at all levels. These biases may prevent and discourage social workers, lawyers, and judges from recommending a child be placed with family or kin overseas, even when a positive assessment recommendation has been made. We need to overcome these deeply held views on what constitutes the best interests of the child when considering an overseas placement. Decision makers must develop a keen awareness into how institutional and historic practices continue to influence whether or not overseas kinship placements is viewed as a viable option. Next slide, please. So finally, I'd like to end with a real case example. So ISS Australia facilitated international kinship care assessments in 2 different countries for 2 different children in care. Each assessment was overwhelmingly positive in regards to the kinship carer's capacity to parent the child. As with all our reports, they contain photos of the home environment, including the backyard. Now, some of you may have already recognized your own personal differences. You might be seeing one garden is tidy and safe and the other is not. While we all have our own prejudice, we must not allow this to overtake what is actually in the best interests of the particular child. So for a child, first and foremost, they need to be safe and loved. But also a child needs to be raised with a sense of identity, connection to their culture, their roots, and a need for belonging. So taking a look at those 2 photos, I just want you to guess which placement do you think was supported by the decision makers and went ahead. Pass it on to the next principal.
Kia ora, tarawhalawa, everyone. I have the privilege of speaking about the 5th principle, which is about identity. My name is Lily Asiu, and I'm a colleague of Paula and Sharon from New Zealand, Oranga Tamariki Ministry for Children. So the identity principle is related to the Article 8 and Article 20 of the Convention of the Rights of the Child. It suggests that child protection systems should prioritize a child's access to their culture, roots, language, community, and traditional land when making placement decisions. This respects the child's right to a robust family life and affords them the opportunity to maintain their identity. The identity principle encompasses the values and beliefs that establishes the child's connection and self-awareness of who they are and where they belong. As a child protection practitioner, I have had the privilege of hearing testimonies from children and their families after successful placement overseas. I worked as a statutory social worker for about 17 years. And in the last 3 years, I've been working as a senior advisor in the International Child Protection Unit, managing casework for cross-border child protection in the Ministry for Children. During these years, I experienced many factors hindering the exploration of the child's access to their culture, roots, language, community, and traditional land when making overseas placement decisions. Second slide, please. I have seen many promises made to families overseas, but the state could not deliver due to the lack of cultural support for staff managing the case from the start, lack of awareness or clarity for own internal processes, lack of partnering connection with local and overseas authorities, lack of understanding in overseas judiciary matters that secures custody and guardianship of the child within their culture, roots, community, and traditional land. So we need to prioritize having appropriate cultural support when working with a child from another ethnic background. We have to have clear internal processes and policies when considering overseas placements with family. We encourage partnership with local child welfare agencies and overseas authorities to strengthen safeguarding measures for children. Child protection practitioners need to understand how to abide by foreign regulations associated with securing permanency for a child when working outside of their jurisdiction. The establishment of the International Child Protection Unit in Orange Maliki led to the development of strong partnership relationships domestically and internationally to achieve best outcomes for children placed overseas. The unit also became a resource to provide guidance and quality assurance for overseas placement. You have the third slide, please. Thank you. So recommended practice for Principle 5 is explore all potential placement options that enables a child to remain within their family and cultural system, including the exploration of any potential family placement options overseas when deemed in their best interests. This also applies to cross-border Khalifa placement, where overseas solutions may have priority over national placements if in case of strong family ties. As a Child Protection Service, we need to invest in cultural support to provide guidance for staff from the beginning to ensure that potential family options overseas are well supported in maintaining connections to meet the child's needs. Develop strong partnership relationships domestically and internationally to achieve best outcomes for children and young people. Having a close partnership with local child welfare services is important for the preparation before any transition plan overseas. They can assist with matters such as a child's travel document, verify immigration status, and provide support when needed. As an example of international relationship, Orange Tamariki have close partnership with a number of Pacific Island countries. We work collaboratively to provide assistance to each other when needed for children moving from their country or from New Zealand. Our overseas partners are the local experts who complete home and caregiver assessments for the families overseas. When considering a placement overseas, it is important to secure the legal rights of the caregivers to make decisions for the child. Legal advice for custody and guardianship matters is key to security and stability of the child's placement. We currently have a process in place with a very close partnership with a lawyer and his law firm in one of the Pacific Islands. This law firm practices family law in the Pacific Island and New Zealand. As part of the child's permanency plans, Orange Tamariki provides financial assistance for legal costs as part of the child's permanency plans, and the lawyer represents birth families and relatives in the overseas family court to revoke the adoption of the child or applies for custody and guardianship of a child. Through this pathway, the adopted child's legal custody and guardianship can return to the birth parents, or the relative secures custody and guardianship of a nephew or a niece back within their family, their culture, beliefs, roots, and their community. Next slide, please. So this is a real case study to finish off this part of the this presentation for Principle 5. A Pacific child migrated to New Zealand through an adoption pathway when she was 10 years old. The New Zealand Ministry for Children received a report of concern when the child was aged 12 years old. The report of concern was due to allegations of severe and ongoing abuse in the home environment. The child was placed into state care with non-kin caregiver because no kin care had been identified who was safe to care for the child. The child asked to be returned home to her birth family and her country of origin in the Pacific. Our partner child welfare agency identified that the child has only been in New Zealand for 3 years, adopted by people who were not blood related to her. The child had serious health conditions, which meant continuous medical treatment until the age of 18 years. During the transition planning, we experienced institutional bias where there were concerns about her proposed overseas placement and comments made that she's better off in New Zealand, where the health system is way better compared to a developing country. Assessments of the capacity and capability of her birth parents were conducted by the Child Protection Service in the country of origin. Assessments of the health resources available in the child's country of origin was also assessed. The assessment report recommended the child's return safely in the care of her parents. The partnership with the law firm led to the child's adoption order being revoked, and the birth parents reassumed the guardianship rights of their daughter. This child was successfully repatriated to her country of origin and reunited with her birth family. She was cited by our staff and local ministry staff at the end of last year, and they were very pleased with her progress. She attends school regularly, received regular medical treatment, and she's safe and happy in the care of her family and her community. If she remained in New Zealand, she would still be in the state care with no connection to her family. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Anjali. I'm from ISS Australia, and I'm going to be talking about Principle 6. And this principle is about adequate planning, and I think it follows well from your example, Lily, just about, what preparation needs to take place before these placements can really happen. So Principle 6, adequate planning, states that the child protection system should sufficiently prepare a child for a placement with family members overseas. And that really this should be done through the development of quite a robust transition plan. And the plan needs to include several aspects. So firstly, there needs to be a focus on pre-placement support. So this is about what carers need to have in place, to be able to prepare for the child's arrival. And then post-placement follow-up and connection to relevant services and resources is also very important. Next slide, please. And then the principle also outlines who should be involved in this planning stage. So the key partners are the child protection system, of course, local professionals, the child's current carer, the prospective carers, and the child. In addition to this, it's important that any kind of transition plan considers contingency plans. So, safeguards in terms of what would happen if a placement was to break down. And ideally, both the sending and the receiving authority should agree about this. Next slide, please. The principle recommends for practice that these plans also consider how a child can be safely moved to the new carer and to the country safely. So it requires identification of a suitable travel companion to accompany the child. It's also important to allocate some additional funds for post-placement support. So, for example, it could be that there are extra funds for health or education support, which will really assist in creating the best environment for the child and the carers to thrive. Finally, it's important that the various forms of care opportunities for development. Next slide, please. So Really, now that we know what the principle is saying, I want to share a case study from ISS Australia, which I think illustrates a lot of these aspects in practice. Earlier, we heard about some of the reservations and challenges that exist in the sector around even exploring an international kinship placement. But when it's actually possible that this is being considered, then obviously the planning stage is very critical. In our experience in ISIS Australia, as Damon pointed out earlier, most of our international kinship cases involve countries with quite similar or comparable, cultures and socioeconomic legal systems, such as the UK and Canada and the USA. But today, I really want to share a recent case we've been working on with ISS Turkey. So I'll just give you a little bit of brief background. It involves a sibling group in care here. And so we received a referral from the local Child Protection Authority to explore a kinship assessment of a family member in Turkey. The assessment report we got back from ISS Turkey was excellent. It was very comprehensive, it was very positive, favourable. And so we advocated to the local authority here that they really should meaningfully consider this care option, because it would mean that the children could remain within their extended family and be in their home country. And in this particular case, the Child Protection Authority actually was in full agreement with us, but they shared that they were facing quite a bit of resistance from the court, and particularly the judge that was overhearing this matter. And it turns out that the judge was particularly apprehensive because, we believe he was very unsure of the systems and services in Turkey. And just in terms of risk, he was worried because this particular sibling group had quite high special educational needs and learning needs. So what we did was we worked quite closely with the child protection team to build a very strong and clear case, which involved a lot of aspects of the planning and preparation that I've talked about in line with this principle. So we consulted with ISIS Turkey regularly, and they provided some really detailed information and guidance around their own child protection system, how it worked, information on how the carers would be prepared to receive the children, about referral mechanisms and so on. So this put the local authority in a much better position, obviously, to inform the courts about the systems in Turkey. And they were able to provide information on what kind of placement support would be available, including reporting and things like that. And it helped in this case, particularly, that ISS Turkey is actually part of the government. So in that sense, they're a statutory authority. So they were able to also clearly establish what the contingency plan would be and add in some adequate safeguards in the unfortunate event if the placement was to break down. So this further strengthened the transition plan. We also suggested to the local Child Protection Authority that they consider allocating some extra funds for post-placement support. And they got agreement for this, which was great. And so it meant additional specialised education and health support services could be arranged for the children and the carers. I just want to add as well that the way we worked on this case was by setting up a number of case conferences so everybody, could be involved and we were all on the same page. We also included our central authority to get some advice on the application of the 1996 Child Protection Convention too. So altogether, these aspects were, included in a transition plan by the Child Protection Authority and submitted to the court. And we recently got the good news that the placement would actually be going ahead. So, there's a lot more planning to do, but it was a really great outcome. And I guess I just want to say in closing that I think we need to acknowledge that it's very important in our work that we recognise that planning for any kind of placement for a child overseas or in a foreign place can feel quite uncomfortable, maybe not for us, but for the partners that we work with, and it can appear risky, even dangerous. But I think with these tools and resources, that we've been referring to, particularly in these principles, there's a lot more potential for these plans to be based on quite objective information and have the safeguards that you need to protect children while promoting their right to family. Thanks. I'll pass on to the next colleague.
Hi, I'm Miyako from ISS Japan. I'm talking about quickly seventh principle accountability. Permanency planning is fundamental to children's long-term outcomes, including their physical health, mental health, emotional health, etc. Global research indicates that children have a greater capacity to thrive when they are raised in family of origin, whenever it is safe and in their best interests. We know in this cohort of very vulnerable children, decisions are taken that goes against their rights and their best interests, often in the name of protecting the child. While family finding and engagement is recognized as best practice, growing international research shows that there may not be adequate support to achieve this when children in care have family across international borders. The scale of challenge is huge and growing. Globally, 281 million people are living outside of their country of origin. As a result, millions of children have family connections that cross international borders. While our ability to move across borders has increased exponentially in the last 50 years, we question whether child protection frameworks have sufficiently adjusted to this reality. Therefore, we strongly believe child protection systems should seek to improve data collection, information management, and reporting system related to children without parental care in all settings and situations, to existing data gaps, and develop global and national baselines. Next, please. We know data collection for inter-country adoption is robust and accurate. However, ISS is not aware of countries in our Asia-Pacific region that systematically and make publicly available the number of cross-border family placements for children who have been in care and removed from their parents. ISS believes the possible placement of children with appropriate family located overseas appears to be rarely, if ever, used. Hence, why these ISS equity permanency principles of child protection practice prioritize the exploration of all possible family placements without discrimination of any kind to achieve the best long-term outcomes for the child. For these reasons, ISS recommended practice for child protection authorities in countries throughout our region is to be able to account for children they are responsible for, including the recording of when and where children are placed out of their jurisdiction across international borders for the purpose of analysis and improvement of system outcomes, and to establish systems for quantitative data collection as well as qualitative data, including opportunities to gather knowledge and expertise from children and adolescents. Thank you.
Thanks, Miko. We've come to the end of the presentation of the principles, and I thank you if you've stuck around. I did look at the participants' numbers, and it looks like many of you have. So we just want to do a really quick poll. We've just got 2 poll questions, and I just ask that you just type your answers into the chat just in a couple of words. So the first question is, what barriers or risks have you encountered in your respective countries when trying to explore overseas family options for children in care? So I'll just give you a couple of minutes or a minute to do that. What barriers or risks? Thanks, Elia. Judicial anxiety, yes. And I think it's, it's great that we've got social workers probably participating here. The big job that I think ISS has found over the years is really influencing, I suppose, those decision makers at a judicial level, lawyers, judges, to really understand, I suppose, the benefits to explore overseas family options. Timeframes, yeah. Yeah, sometimes not enough extensive family finding is being completed. It's sometimes hard enough to explore and find families in your own country, and how do you even start, or even how do you even do that in other countries? It might be just something that your child protection workers are running from crisis to crisis and just really haven't got the time or the know-how to really do that. But it's a disservice to the children in care. This is. Move on to maybe the next question. There's some really good answers there. Thanks, Sue. Bias. I've talked about the bias. I think that's a big one that we have to change. Question 2. Next slide. So again, into the chat is what solutions are needed to implement cross-border family placements? i.e., what tools or what training do you think is needed to promote more cross-border family placements? Cultural differences, yeah, and we've talked about that. Yeah, look, an example that I always share is, in New South Wales, a assessment framework might look at does the prospective carer have child constraints in their car? As for in Thailand, they might be all traveling on the back of a motorbike, and they're not going to have child constraints in their car. So being really culturally sensitive to if your framework in your country just can't simply or just be used in the overseas country. Thanks, Rosa. Central point of contact, yeah. And this is what ISS tries to do. That the purpose of our network is to be that liaise between the different child protection systems in the respective countries and create that collaboration. Thanks, Becky. Yeah, I think in terms of the out-of-home care sector, really promoting and getting social workers to understand this is an option, and that's why we found that video really powerful in terms of sending that round to different offices throughout Sydney. It's really sort of, I suppose, influenced a sort of a thinking change in that office, and we really need to explore these placements. That's great. Regional platform for peer support. Key relationships. It is about the relationships. It's about working with those local stakeholders in that country. So thanks, Hadija. I think we've pretty much come to the end. And for those that have stuck around, I don't think we had actual questions in the chat box. I couldn't see, but here's an opportunity. If we go to the next slide, we've got the panel. If you're keen to stick around any longer, we could do a I don't know if you can do a raise your hand or ask a question in the chat, or to any of the panelists, and anything further that you wanted to ask. We've also got that email address too at our head office in Geneva that you can always drop us an email. Was the placement option chosen in India or England? I didn't give you the answer. Look, I thought it was England, and I've very rarely seen, we've had really positive assessments done in India, and we just haven't seen those placements go ahead. We get assessments done in England, and we see those, and that's where I was talking about that bias or unconscious bias, or just thinking it's, is it going to be safe for this child to go to that country? So yeah, I really wanted to sort of illustrate those photos, because I think that sort of has an impact on the decision makers when they see such a picture like that. Is there any other? Okay, we've got someone with a hand up. I don't know how. Oh, here's Sue from Queensland. Could we have a de-identified example of a transition plan, such as the one that supported the siblings? Yeah, we could support. Yeah, we can work with you in terms of that. In terms of sort of understanding what a transition plan should entail, and how we would see that that would work. They obviously vary from country to country, but yeah, having the elements of what that would entail, we could work with you for that. Thanks, Sue. Any other questions from the? Any questions for specific panelists and what they presented to? We're open to. I think if someone's typing, I'll just give it another minute or so. Maybe next slide then, please, Tamaki. Look, for those that have stuck around for the whole session, and we've put the survey link in the chat, we would really love you to fill out this short survey on SurveyMonkey. I just really want to thank to my panelists from across the region. It's really quite a privilege to do a webinar in a regional aspect through Asia Pacific with our ISS colleagues, and I think it sort of shows the strength of the ISS network. We've got network members, as I said, in over 130 across the world. So just to see a small handful of us today just co-presenting and talking about equity and permanency, it's just a real privilege. So thank you for all. Thanks, my panelists. Thanks for all the and Iris going, let's take a photo of the webinar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go for it. Yeah, go
So
for it.
it's a good moment. So for we have over 100 participants. Anyone want to cap this memory? Just open your camera, see whether we can have a screen cap. Please
Maybe
join us and
maybe shut the presentation down now, and then
just
I don't know if it will show them.
So let's see. Please open your camera.
It might be set to us where it only is seeing the panelists, so that might be it. Yeah. Okay.
So just panelists have a photo. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you, everyone. Thanks, my fellow panelists. Thanks for everyone that we're doing a recording of this, so we'll send that out, and feel free to circulate with anyone that might be interested. But thanks for attending, and have a great day. See ya.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you. See you. Thanks, Damon.
See ya. Bye.
Team. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Host just keep here or?